Are there any things that come up for you there? Things that are productive, but you don't realize it, or are not productive that you think are?
Anything athletic is going to be net positive, cross transfer to everything else. So, which is slightly different from exercise. I mean, exercise, yes, but specifically athletic, something that is faster paced, where you get punished for not paying attention. Skiing, pickleball in your case, rock climbing, these things are all deeply restorative for me, even though they're energetically intensive and expensive. I would say on the unproductive side, often any type of competition, which is a tough one for me because I like competing and I think I'm a pretty good competitor. And I've been rewarded a lot for competing. In school, you get the top marks, or in sports, you have a certain record. In business, you have a certain outcome. In investing, you have a certain portfolio of startups. You're rewarded for competing in so many different ways that you can end up allowing the competition to dictate what you do instead of choosing what you should do or might want to do, whether there is competition or not. Does that make sense?
Yes. So, yes.
For instance, I like competing. There's part of me that enjoys competing, but I don't want to use the wrong tool for the job, which is part of the reason that I'm exploring other things like rock climbing. I don't think I'll necessarily compete in rock climbing, archery, maybe. Looking for other avenues to scratch that competitive itch rather than, for instance, looking at what the latest best practices might be in the podcasts that are growing the fastest / television shows now, of course. And it doesn't mean I shouldn't experiment with those things. But if the primary driver behind it is because I want to quote unquote win, I find that to be a false lead. That is as Lord Rabbi Jonathan Sacks said on my podcast before he passed pretty shortly thereafter, maybe a year and a half later, that is a temptation to be resisted rather than an opportunity to be seized. So I think a big part of maturing is separating those two, being able to distinguish between an opportunity to be seized and a temptation to be resisted. And for me, much like when I chatted with BJ Novak, who's a very well-known writer, famous for The Office, he also does a lot of acting and directing, but he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, but something along the lines of, whenever I find myself saying about an opportunity, but it's so much money, that's a red flag. That's a cue to pause. When it's like, but it's such good money. That's a cue to pause. For me, the drive to compete and win at this point for me is a cue to pause. When I was younger, I think it was really helpful, really critical fuel. And even now it might be at some point, but
use it strategically
because in competition of various types, and you see this in the money game and say pure finance, not always, but often what's invisible from the outside are the sacrifices that people are making, the compromises they are making to fixate solely on whatever this competitive driver might be or whatever the scoreboard might be. And for instance, one of my very close friends, actually one of my college roommates, worked for a guy in finance in New York City at one point. And this guy was legendary. I mean, super famous day trader, talk about stressful, rich beyond belief. And he always walked around with a briefcase, pretty old school, with divorce papers ready to go in case he needed them. Because his relationship had become that frayed and contentious. And if you're only reading the media profiles of this guy, that is not included. So the costs of high-level competition are often invisible.
Yes.
So you have to be careful about emulating people. And what I would say is, if you're not willing to make There are always sacrifices. So try to identify those in the competition, in the competitive sphere before you jump in with both feet. So for me, I would say competition is definitely a flag. Sometimes it's still a go. Sometimes it's still a green light, but I want to at least use that as a pause. Same with money, the money stuff, same. Yeah.
Yeah, I fell in love with an essay from Jason Pargin where he said, accept that all of your heroes are full of shit. Your heroes aren't gods. They're just regular people who got good at one thing by sacrificing literally everything else. And I think in my experience, looking at high performers, they're not ubiquitous human-wide examples of perfect people. They're usually very competent in one narrow domain. And sometimes they've managed to hold on to the remainder. And sometimes they've had to completely burn everything else down, either as a byproduct of or upstream as the creator of their success.
Yeah, I would modify that slightly to say just be cautious about meeting your heroes because a lot of them will have clay feet. There are counterexamples.
Clay feet.
Well, it just means that they're flawed in one way or another.
In other news, this episode is brought to you by Nomatic. I don't know what backpack Tim Ferriss uses, but he should be using this puppy right here. The team at Nomatic make the most functional, durable, and highest quality, best engineered backpacks on the planet. Your backpack is an intimate part of your daily life. It's carrying your most precious cargo. You're taking it with you every single day. And this is the thing that I used for a full month while I was on tour. I didn't need hold luggage. It's a psyop meant to keep you poor and late. Hand luggage is all you need if you have a well-designed backpack, and this puppy is the best that I've ever found. Best of all, it's got a lifetime guarantee. So if anything breaks during the entire life of the product, they will give you a new one for free. This is the last backpack that you ever need to buy. There are thousands of 5-star reviews for all of Nomatic's stuff, but this is my pick of the bunch. Right now, you can see all of the products that I use and recommend from Nomatic by going to the link in the show notes below or heading to nomatic.com/modernwisdom to get a 20% discount site-wide. That's nomatic.com/modernwisdom.